One quick announcement before we get the show started. If your business would like to get your product or service in front of the data skeptic audience, now is the time to reach out. Send us an email at advertising@dataskeptic.com. We're opening up the rest of the year's inventory and also slots in Q1 2023. These go fast. We do a lot of shows, but not that many. If I was making bourbon, I'd number the bottles. If you've reached out since about March, I told you we were on pause. You should have recently gotten an email from my colleague. If you didn't, reach out again. But conversations are starting now. That's advertising@dataskeptic.com. All right, thanks, and on to the show. I don't want anybody to think I'm picking on Amazon.com, but this week and next, I'm speaking to researchers who did a deep dive into some of their practices. Today it's reviews fraud. Do you look at the reviews before you buy something online? Honestly, me personally, I want to see a few one-star reviews. For whatever reason, those are the most informative. These glowing 5-star, best experience ever reviews, it should come as no surprise to any of you that some of those are fake, or rather, they don't express the actual sentiment of an actual customer. Having glowing reviews and lots of them can attract new business, not just because it looks like others have had a good experience with you, but because algorithmically, platforms like Amazon might choose to rank you higher. That makes sense, right? A restaurant that only gets 1-star reviews should quickly find its way to the bottom of the list. So who's faking reviews, and how are they doing it? Is this a big thing or a small thing? All those questions and more on today's episode of Data Skeptic Ad Tech.
My name is Raj, and I'm currently working as an applied scientist at Microsoft in the ads fraud division. The research that we are going to talk about today, that has been done as part of my PhD coursework, and I'd just like to put it out there that it was not supported or endorsed by Microsoft in any way. This is my personal research done on my own time.
I guess optionally, would you want to comment at all on your current work before we get into this research?
So currently I work as an applied scientist and I work with ads fraud. So that's a little bit different than the reviews fraud that we're going to talk about today. But basically in the ads ecosystem, there is a lot of bad actors who are trying to game the system and make money by sending fake clicks our way, by sending bots, by sending fake conversions our way. And my current work is to use statistics and machine learning along with some common sense to detect those bots and kick them off the network.
It seems like there could be a lot of back and forth. Does that become kind of a cat and mouse game?
It is actually a cat and mouse game. So we have these dashboards and metrics that tell us what the traffic is looking like. And if we see something abnormal, we do what's called a hotfix that kicks that traffic off the network. Eventually they catch up, they see that they're not making money, and they try to send the traffic through some other source. So maybe they will change the sites it's coming from. Maybe they will change the ads it's hitting. Maybe they will change like the cookies it's sending it from. So they adapt and we adapt with them.
Well, with regard to the specific types of fraud and these sorts of things we're going to get into today, how did you first become interested in the marketplace of Amazon?
So I've always been interested in working in the general area of fraud and abuse on the internet. And to be honest, I actually discovered this as it was pure coincidence. I was scrolling through my Facebook feed and I saw an ad that said, "Do you want this product for free? If so, click here." So I thought it would be a scam, but I just went ahead with it anyway. The proposal that the ad made to me was that I buy the product, I pay in full, I buy the product, I leave a 5-star review for that product, and once they see the review, they give me the entire cost of the product, they refund it to me. So basically, I get a free product. I thought that might be a scam, that's just their way of getting people to buy their product, but I thought it was risk-free, right? I had a 30-day guarantee with Amazon, so it was risk-free. So I bought it. I bought it was like a neck pillow. So I bought a neck pillow and I left a 5-star review for it and they actually refunded me. So it worked. So it was a thing that, they are paying people, they're giving away free products to get 5-star reviews. And I thought it was really ingenious, but then I also discovered that it was illegal. Illegal as in it was against Amazon's terms of service to manipulate reviews with free products. You know how social media works, right? You click on an ad and you go down that rabbit hole. You see similar ads. So I kept seeing a lot of these ads. And eventually, someone reached out to me asking if I would do it. I think probably the person from who I bought the neck pillow, probably they shared my Facebook alias with someone, and that's how they reached out to me. And that person invited me to a group, a Facebook group, and it had hundreds of thousands of members, and it was full of posts about like, we need a 5-star review for this product, can you buy it and leave a 5-star review. It was basically sort of a marketplace where reviews, ratings, seller feedback, all of these things were sold. So there were agents who worked for these third-party sellers. They used to post their products. Users could buy these products, leave the review, send a review screenshot to the agent, and get the product free of cost. So I got interested in this area purely as like a coincidence because I saw an ad one time, but I found it really fascinating.
I knew that there were fake reviews, and I knew that some of them were from companies, so there was an industry here, but I'd never been quite on the inside like you were. Does that give you any preview into how big this is? An estimate of how many people are employed in this sort of work? How much fraud reviews going on?
So it's actually hard to estimate how much fraud review is going on. The reason is that there's when I searched for these terms on Facebook, I found that there were like hundreds of such groups. So I don't know like how many members were in each group, but I think it's a pretty massive reviews industry overall. I don't know the scale, but the agents I spoke to, at least, they shared like their spreadsheet with me, the spreadsheet that lists out all of their products that they have. And it had like 2,000, 5,000, even 10,000 products at some time. So on a product scale, it's like pretty large. And then when we actually surveyed those agents, we also asked about, if you work in a group or you have a team that works with you. And some agents reported working in a group as large as like 500 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kinds of fraud do you see on the platform?
The problem that we are trying to deal with is fraudulent reviews. So the kind of fraud that we see at a high level is that sellers are trying to get users to buy their products, refund the amount, and in exchange for a 5-star review. This is the a kind of fraud that we actually started off studying with. But once we investigated it in depth and we talked to buyers, we talked to agents, we realized that there were 3 other kinds of fraud. And this is like fraud within fraud. So because there's 3 entities, sellers, buyers, and agents, each entity has an incentive to defraud the other 2. So what some buyers do is that they buy the product, they write a 5-star review, they get their refund, and they just return the product to Amazon. So basically, they just made money out by writing a review. So if I buy a $50 product, I got the product for free, they refunded it to me, and I also got the money back from Amazon. The seller lost twice the money and had a returned product, and the buyer gained $50. So that's the kind of buyer fraud that we see. There's also seller fraud. Sellers actually ask for reviews for products from their competitors, and once the review is written, they never refund the buyers. And what we have seen through our interviews, what buyers do is that they downgrade the review to a 1-star review and return the product. So a seller, at no cost to him, was able to basically defame another seller and add negative reviews to a competitor's profile, a competitor seller. And finally, there's agent fraud, in which an agent basically does what we would call a man-in-the-middle attack. An agent asks a buyer to write a review and sends like the review screenshot to the seller for a refund, but instead of telling them who the buyer was, then agent shares a different PayPal address. It's their own PayPal address. And that's where the agent gets the refund. So the agent is scamming the buyer. And because the buyer thinks he's been scammed, he again downgrades the review to a 1-star review. So the agent has scammed both the buyer and the seller. All 3 actors are fraudulent, and they have some incentive to defraud the other 2 as well, not just Amazon.
Well, if I had a small business and I thought my competitors were doing this, I might feel like I had to do it just to keep up. But could there be an arms race of fake reviews?
Yes, there is an arms race actually, and not just for small businesses. To give you like a high level overview of how this works is that a seller contracts an agent to get these fake reviews, fraudulent reviews, 5-star reviews. And these agents reach out to buyers, like people like you and me who are Amazon customers. We buy the product, we leave a review and we send like a screenshot of our order and the review to the agent. The agent forwards it to the seller, and the seller refunds us the price of the product, and the agent gets like a commission, typically $3 or $4. So this is how the process works end to end. But when we actually did some investigation and through our surveys, we found that there were several, so there's three parties involved, right? There's a buyer, there's an agent, and there's the seller. But there are several kinds of like fraud within the fraud, if you will. And one of them is like the reviews arms race that you described. There's this thing called competitive review fraud that we discovered, which meant that some sellers actually asked agents to get reviews for a competitor product. So if I sell neck pillows or I sell headphones, I choose like a competitor and I tell agents that I need reviews for the competitor's headphones. And once I get that review, I never refund them. So they think I've scammed them, right? They think that I am like a dishonest person who just tricked them into buying this product. So what buyers typically do in such scenarios, which is also something we discovered through our surveys, is that if they don't get a refund, they downgrade their 5-star review to a 1-star review and write bad things. So a seller actually generated fake negative reviews for its competitor. That's the kind of arms race that is actually happening.
Wow, that's like Lex Luthor level thinking to get that done.
Exactly, right? Like it was really ingenious to think of, but it's at no cost to them. They just say that if you write a 5-star review, we will refund you the price of the product, and then they never refund. So the buyers think they've been scammed. They return the product to Amazon. They leave a 1-star review. The buyer didn't lose anything. This seller didn't lose anything, but the competitor, who may have been like an honest seller, they just had like a 5-star review and a return on Amazon. They had a 1-star review and a return on Amazon for no reason at all. Yeah, and they don't know what's going on, right? They honestly think that this buyer had such a terrible experience with the product that they wrote a 1-star review and returned the product.
Well, these tactics certainly violate Amazon's terms of service. Maybe they do it in secret. What steps is Amazon taking to thwart these efforts?
Amazon is actually very active and vocal about removing these kinds of reviews. To begin with, it's against their terms of service to write such reviews or to even seek such reviews. So they routinely block user accounts, so like consumer accounts like you and me, from writing reviews. They won't kick us off the network, but they'll prevent us from writing reviews. And they'll also close or terminate relationship with third-party sellers who they suspect to be engaging in this kind of fraud. So they have come down against a couple of brands. I think one of them is called Oki. So they've come down on them, terminated all relationships with that brand or that seller because they were suspected of being involved in reviews fraud. Amazon actually recently launched, they have filed a lawsuit against some Facebook group moderators, and those are the groups that I'm talking about, the groups that facilitate the exchange of these reviews. So Amazon is actually very vocal, and Amazon is trying very hard to remove this, but this is the kind of fraud that's very hard to detect. So traditionally, review fraud used to be like bots or spam or like people just copy pasting reviews. But now this flavor of fraud is different. It's real Amazon customers, paying customers who use Amazon on a regular basis. Maybe they also use Prime. Maybe they also use it for their Whole Foods deliveries. And a couple of their orders have fake reviews. It is very hard to detect such reviews because the incriminating activity, the activity that actually makes it illegal, that's the refund part, that happens outside of Amazon. The refund comes through PayPal or Zelle or Venmo. Amazon is trying hard, but this is something that's incredibly hard to detect at that scale, for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe, if you were saying that at least the one broker would get maybe $3 or $4. I can't imagine anyone makes a huge dollar amount. They get the free item, I suppose. But I guess what I'm driving at is it wouldn't surprise me if people were putting in minimum effort. Can you spot a fake from looking at it?
Well, ideally, you could, if what you said was true, putting in the minimum effort. But since Amazon comes down hard on these accounts, buyers are actually very vigilant about not being detected. And in fact, when you buy a product from an agent, the agent will give you like tips and tricks so that your review appears genuine. So for example, they will ask you to write like a longer review, like at least 200 or 300 words. They'll ask you not to be too extreme in your views. They'll ask you to include like a photo or a video. In fact, sometimes they will also like refund you the product and an additional $10 if you add a video. They will ask you to answer some questions in the Q&A section and mark some other reviews as helpful. This is on the review side, but even on the search side, they will tell you to not just they'll never give you the link of the product to buy. They'll ask you to search for it. They'll say read a few reviews, spend some time on the page, because that's also Amazon is also recording that, right? Whenever they try to detect the authenticity of a review, they'll see how that user landed at that product. So we also simulate an organic search. So it's very hard to tell a fake from a real review. And like I said, because this is a new flavor of fraud, the review fraud that has been studied before, if it's like spam bots or it's copy paste, it's very easy to detect because you see the reviews clustered together. You see similar reviews, or you see like 1,000 reviews posted in a minute if it's like an automated thing.
Yeah.
This isn't that. This review is not fake technically. It's just fraudulent. It's by a real person. A real human spent time to put down their experiences and write that review. So it's very hard to detect that review. And additionally, like agents have these tactics that they ask you to follow to prevent detection by Amazon.
Well, I'm very aware that supervised learning is a technique a lot of people have applied to detecting fraud in the past, but of course with supervised learning, you need a label.
Yes.
Is it hopeless now? Is there any way we can get some ground truth around this sort of data set?
Well, you actually can. In the way that I did. So what I did for the study was that I infiltrated a few of these Facebook groups and I posed as a buyer. Basically, I was seeking, I posted in the group saying that I was a buyer, I was looking for products to buy. Then a couple of agents reached out to me and shared links to like what products they have. Those were in the form of spreadsheets. Now, since I had that, I was confident that those products were engaged in this fraudulent review service. I could get the ground truth that way. But of course, Amazon has millions of products. My study was limited to like 2,000 products or so. So I don't know how feasible it is to get these labels at scale, but that's how I did it at least. So it will require like honeypots, sting operations, and sort of these infiltrations if you want high confidence ground truth in the labels.
What do you use as a control against that group?
To understand what the control is, you need to understand how the fraud, basically who is benefiting from the fraudulent reviews. So Amazon has this program called Fulfilled by Amazon, or FBA, that allows third-party sellers from outside the US to sell their products here within the US or even in other countries. If you search for headphones, you're going to see the products at the top based on reviews and ratings, and the seller is going to benefit. The same headphone might be sold by multiple sellers, but that becomes a different product listing. So the third-party seller is going to benefit by having more positive reviews, more 5-star ratings, more photos, videos, more like better seller feedback. So this, because the seller is benefiting, these are the third-party sellers that seek incentivized reviews. What we used as a control group was products which were only shipped and sold by Amazon.com. That means they were either from Amazon's in-house brand, Amazon Basics, or reputed brands like Sony, Apple, Samsung, HP, Dell, Philips, all of those which were sold and shipped by Amazon.com. Now, because they were sold and shipped by Amazon, the only person that would gain from these fake reviews would be Amazon. We assume two things. One is that Amazon would not violate its own terms of service by adding fake reviews, especially not this way. They wouldn't add fake reviews to the products. And the second thing is that if they did want to manipulate rankings, reviews, ratings, all of this, they didn't need fake reviews, right? They own the platform. They could just have manipulated their ranking algorithms to show their products at the top.
Yeah.
So that gave us enough confidence to say that if a product is shipped and sold by Amazon.com, it has no incentivized reviews. I looked at what 2,000 products I had. I broke them down into broad categories, and I picked similar products but shipped and sold by Amazon, and I scraped their reviews to compare what I saw with this one.
Cloud ushers in great potential. Today's data-driven organizations can innovate and fly higher and faster than before. Astrato is built for modern data teams. It's a cloud-native solution with direct access to all the power, agility, and scalability of the Snowflake data cloud. And with Astrato, there's no data movement, so your business reaps the benefits of enhanced data quality, boosting your competitive advantage, reducing costs, and improving decision-making business-wide. Because your insights are always up to date, Astrato is extremely useful as a rapid prototyping tool, further speeding up the time to value. Data teams can employ this time-saving capability for data prototyping, rapid dashboards, and building business application prototypes so you can test things in a rich, no-code environment. This means the time to value is reduced from hours or days to mere minutes. As a progressive data leader, you need the right resources to help your team and help performance levels soar. Find out more at astrato.io/dataskeptic. ASTRATO, astrato.io/dataskeptic. Thanks to our sponsor, Neptune.ai. 99% of machine learning teams are doing awesome things at a reasonable scale with 4 people and 2 production models. But most of the industry best practices come from a handful of companies operating models at hyperscale. The folks over at Neptune.ai want to change that by sharing insights, tool stacks, and real-life stories from practitioners doing machine learning and ML ops at a reasonable scale. They even built a flexible tool for experiment tracking and model registry that will fit with your workflow at no scale, reasonable scale, and beyond. Check them out at Neptune.ai. Okay, yeah, I like this method. So you have, I agree, Amazon Basics wouldn't cheat by having fake reviews, so that's like a ground truth, not cheater. And then, of course, because of your spreadsheet, you also have some ground truth likely to contain fake reviews. What kind of analysis can you do across these 2 groups?
Once we had these 2 groups, test and control, we wanted to compare what, if at all, they show any feature differences. Now, one thing we'd like to note here is that we had a ground truth information at the product level, not at the review level. So we knew what products were engaged in seeking incentivized reviews, but we don't know which of those were actually incentivized. There is always that chance that someone got the product, bought the product, and actually liked it and left a 4 or 5 star review. That's completely possible. So we limited our analysis to be at the product level. At the product level, we calculated like a bunch of statistics. We used features like what is the rating for the review, how long is the review, what is the number of images, what is the number of videos, what is the polarity, or what is like the extremity of the content, extremity of the review. We compared the distribution of these features between the control group and our test group. In the control group, there was a lot of variance in all of these. So a lot of variance in the reviews length, which means that you had reviews of varying lengths. A lot of variance in the rating on a product level. A lot of variance in the polarity, in the extremity of the content, in the sentiment, all of these things. In the test group, the fraudulent group, on the other hand, we found that they were skewed. The variances were very small. The ratings were mostly 5-star because they were incentivized. But even on a product level, there was much smaller variance, much smaller deviation in all of these other features. So I think that is some valuable information that we can use, that a product that is genuine, that will not seek incentivized reviews, and so the features will exhibit the kind of randomness that you would expect from organic and like an organic user experience, as opposed to in the test group, where because you're telling people how write a review of at least 200 words or add at least 2 photographs to your review, that's where the lack of variance is coming from.
Is there something we can make actionable of that? Could that be used for fraud detection maybe?
It could be used for fraud detection, and we tried to do that. We tried to build machine learning models to detect at a product level which products were engaged in incentivized reviews and which were not. The problem that we found was that our models performed like reasonably well. We had a good accuracy in the higher 80s, and we had a good precision also in the higher 80s. The problem is this: if you want to use something at scale, like at the level of Amazon, you have to have a model that shows very high precision. A high precision model is one which is very confident in its positive predictions. So when I mark something as fraud, I have to be absolutely sure that this is fraud, right? Amazon has to operate on a high precision level. And the reason is that if they start marking everything, if they start marking more and more stuff as fraud, and they have more and more false positives, they're going to lose revenue, they're going to lose customers, and they're going to lose genuine sellers. So it's not good for them. Like even a model that in theory looks good at 80% precision is not good enough to be used in production, because at that scale even the 20% false positive is a lot. It can amount to millions of dollars in revenue, it can amount to millions of customers and hundreds of thousands of sellers. So you could potentially use it, but I definitely think we need a lot more research to see how this can be applied at scale, or see how these models could be improved. So probably the variance features that we saw, they were not the only ones. Probably there are many others. And Amazon presumably has access to a lot more information than I could get, because they can get, like search patterns, they can get historical trends, they can get like how much time the user spent on that page, and so on. So presumably, I hope that this variance finding could help them. Yes, could be used for fraud detection, but needs a lot more research to apply at scale.
Well, you mentioned earlier the survey. Could you talk a little bit about where you sourced your respondents from?
So when I saw these ads, I became really intrigued into how this ecosystem was working, and I also wondered if it was happening at scale. And when I entered those Facebook groups, I started learning a lot more. But I still felt that I had scratched only the surface. So I wanted to understand internally, more in depth, about how the system is working. Like, who are these agents? Where are they coming from? What are they gaining from doing this? And who are the sellers? Is this even beneficial to them? And so I thought the only way to do this would be to actually talk to these agents, talk to these buyers, to see what their incentives are, what are their evasion tactics, if any, that they use to avoid detection by Amazon, and why they are doing it, and how the system works, what does the operational characteristics look like. So I observed like the group activity, and I figured out who was a buyer and who was an agent. So an agent would be the one posting photos of products, and the buyers would be the ones commenting interested on it. I reached out to these via Facebook Messenger, and I shared my identity with them. I told them who I was, I told them what I was studying, and I told them that I would like to ask a few questions for research. They would not have to give me their real name or any identifying information like a phone number or even an email. I would be reporting all information or everything, all of my analysis in aggregates or through code names. So like a participant 1 would be P1, for example. That's how I reached out to my survey participants. I reached out to a lot of people. Not everyone was willing to talk about this, but I was lucky enough to find like a few who were able to do it.
And what kind of response size are we talking about?
So it's not like a huge set, but I spoke to around like 38 agents and 36 buyers. Now I know that doesn't sound like a lot, and there is probably hundreds of thousands of more of these, but most of qualitative research in literature generally works with smaller sample sizes of 10 to 12 participants. And so I think that we could reasonably generalize from what we learned in the sample size of relatively larger sample size of 38 people and 36 people respectively.
To start with, could we maybe explore some of the demographic details you asked about? What types of people engage in these activities?
There's 3 main entities involved. There's sellers, there's agents, and there's buyers. We're not able to survey sellers, but we were able to survey agents and buyers and ask them questions about each of the other 2 entities. The sellers, most agents reported that sellers are from China. That is where we discovered that the sellers are not only engaging in this incentivized review activity on Amazon, but some agents were also contracted to get reviews for the same product on Walmart, Wayfair, and Target. These websites also allow third-party sellers to bring in their own products. And I'm guessing that the incentive was similar to game the products, to game the reviews and ratings so that they would appear higher in rankings. Then the agents were mostly from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and they were like around like 21 to 35 years old. One thing I'd like to note here is that they had limited education and they came from low income countries. So a commission of $3 or $4 was actually a lot relative to where they were living. If you look to the incentives section in my paper, you'll see that I asked them to compare the income that they got through these commissions and the income from a full-time job, if they had any. Most of the agents earn commission comparable to their monthly income, and it ranges from like 30% to 100% of their total income. So some agents, they don't have any other full-time job. This is what they do for a living. So they are at home and they are engaged in this buy and sale of reviews, if you will. One agent notes that 1 month he earned like $250 and his regular job pays $100. So you see how it's profitable for them, right?
Absolutely.
That is why that's the incentive behind them. And I think it also stems from the fact that they are coming from low income countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, because that is why they feel that this amount is a lot compared to what they earn. The third entity, buyers, I initially thought that they were mostly US, buyers were located mostly in the US, but that was because it turned out that I was in the Facebook group that said US buyers. But this fraudulent reviews thing actually extends to UK, Ireland, France, Germany, and Canada as well. So there are buyers in all these countries too who are engaging in writing fake reviews.
And is this sort of a one agent, one person deal, like these are independent people, or are there any agencies out there, like companies that have employees and that sort of thing?
Yes, there are companies that have employees. So these agents typically work in groups. Some agents work in groups of as large as 500. There's these fake review rings, if you will. It's actually very sophisticated to be like part of a group like this, because when I did some digging, I found out that these agents working under like a common admin or a common like working in the same group, they have incentive structures. Like they have a leaderboard that displays what agent was able to get how many reviews this month, and the top agents are awarded some bonus as a prize, so like $200 extra or something. There's no formal companies, if you will, but these people work in groups. There are fake review rings is what I like to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not actual companies, but they're sort of groups or people that band together to this.
Did you get any insights into the types of tactics they use to avoid being detected?
It's pretty sophisticated, this whole reviews ecosystem, and there's a leaderboard like I told you, but there's also extensive training material that will help you get onboarded as an agent. So if you tomorrow want to become an agent, there is videos that you can watch, there's PowerPoint slides that you can see about how you can talk to a buyer, how you can pitch your product, and more importantly, how you can evade detection by Amazon. We found like a lot of evasion tactics. It began with like organic search, like searching for a product organically. So never click on the link. Just if you want to buy a headphone, just search for good headphones or Bluetooth headphones, and basically give Amazon the impression that you are reaching organically on that product. Basically, it wasn't an incentivized purchase. And then you engage with the platform. You spend some time reading comments. You spend some time marking some reviews as helpful. You ask a question in the Q&A that convinces Amazon that you are a real buyer and you're not doing this just to get a refund later on. Other tactics are about review timing, which says that don't write a review immediately after you receive the product. You would have had to experience the product for a while, so maybe wait 10 days, 15 days, or if some even say like 3 weeks, like 21 days. There's this about review content. Your comments shouldn't be too extreme in the review. Talk about specific features of the product. Mention pros and cons and put at least one con so they don't think that you just want to write positive reviews. And then there's also something about having a balance of positive and negative reviews on a user account. So if I'm an Amazon user and I just write 5-star reviews, something is suspicious, right? Either I'm too easy of a rater to give 5-star reviews to everyone, or I'm buying incentivized product. So these sellers, these agents actually recommend you to have some 1 or 2 star reviews on your profile. We discovered through our surveys that like some buyers actually, the products that they bought on their own, they just wrote like 1 or 2 star reviews for them, even if the products were good, just to have some balance. So you see how this is affecting even like genuine sellers who had no role whatsoever in this entire process. But just because a buyer wants some negative reviews on his account, that's why they are writing negative reviews as well.
So, I mean, what do we do here? It seems like, this is a pretty sophisticated way of posing these. I don't know that machine learning is going to solve the problem. Do we just give up on reviews, or what do you think should happen next?
To be honest, that is a question that I'm still trying to find the answer to. The challenge here is that this is human created fraud. This is human driven fraud. This isn't machine driven. If it was machine driven, then machine learning would have had a good success rate. So there's a lot more research that needs to go into detecting these reviews, and I think Amazon has already started like getting ground truth with their honeypots and sting operations. They've been doing a lot of these recently, so I think getting more ground truth data might help. It's possible that graph neural networks might help. So graph is a connected set of entities, and as users, products, reviews, they're all interrelated. So perhaps graph neural networks could help in identifying clusters of bad products or clusters of bad reviews. Like if certain users always write reviews for a certain group of products, probably something is wrong, right? Because why would you have such a group otherwise if it's not incentivized? So something like that. But it does seem, to answer your question, like it does seem bleak for reviews. Like basically, because I know so much about this, every time I want to buy something from Amazon, I really don't feel, or not just Amazon, from anywhere, I really don't feel that I can trust reviews. I'm always like, oh, but what if they paid this person to write this? But oh, what if they refunded this person? We'd never know.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer to your question, unfortunately.
So do you let reviews influence you at all, or is that just something you completely filter out in your own life?
I mean, it's a good thing to go by reviews because that talks about like people's experiences. But now I tend to go more by word of mouth than something, or by someone who has like a verified identity, like a real person posting it, than just like a user account. Because on Amazon, you can set any name to the account, your user account that is displayed publicly. It doesn't have to be your real name. So I trust like word of mouth. I trust people who have posted about it on social media, or I trust places where you can see like verified user identities. That's where I trust.
I guess speculatively, I wanted to ask you, do you have any reason to suspect that technologies like DALL-E or GPT-3 are faking any of these reviews just yet?
They might be, but to be honest, if they were, then we have something to work with. So there is this whole line of research that goes into detecting machine-generated text or bot-generated text, the text that has been generated by language models. That often shows some different characteristics than human-generated text. But the problem we have is exactly the opposite. This review fraud is not using any sort of these generation models or bots to write their reviews.
Yeah.
If it was, then we would have had some signals or some evidence. But because it's like people like you and me who write genuine reviews, and it's also people like you and me who are writing these fake reviews, the only difference is that I'm getting a refund on my PayPal. The reviews don't really look that different. I don't think the technologies that you mentioned, they're being used here. If they were, we would have, that's actually good news. We would have had something to work with. Like I wish like they were mostly, this fraud was driven by mostly bots, because then we would have additional signals like, hey, does this account post 10,000 reviews every day? Something is wrong. Like no human can do that. It's a bot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, and that is where the problem lies actually.
Well, do you have any vision for the future then? Do we still have reviews 5 or 10 years down the road, or is this something that just kind of goes to the wayside?
I don't know. I mean, reviews definitely, reviews are very valuable in like sharing personal experiences about a product, and they help prevent like the other kind of fraud, right? The kind of fraud where someone claims to have or sell a product that's not what it is, like they're lying about it. And reviews actually help prevent this kind of fraud. So we do need reviews, I think. I think we need stricter controls over who can post reviews. like maybe a spending limit that you need to spend this much, at least a specific amount to write a review, or identity verification, like you're allowed to write a review only if you verified your identity, and you don't need to share your identity with the world, but the platform can verify your identity.
Yeah.
That would give me some more confidence to see if on a platform only verified people are able to write reviews, verified in the sense that their identity has been verified, then that gives me more confidence in believing those reviews.
Yeah, I'd like to see a process like that. I think that could be really good. Raj, is there anywhere people can follow you online?
I am active on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, all three of these. So definitely, if anyone wants any more information about my study or any more insights that I have, feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms.
Very cool. I'll have links to both in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your work.
Of course. Thank you, Kyle.
This work is one of the contributing factors that has made me kind of cynical about online reviews. I might look at them, but I'm going to make my ultimate decision a different way. But then I got to thinking, what happens if I want to order via my Alexa smart speaker? How does